The first letter was easy to ignore, the second made him uneasy. But by the third, billionaire Nathaniel Carter realized someone wasn't just sending warnings, they were predicting his murder. And they were right. Nathaniel Carter leaned back in his sleek, high-rise office, the city skyline stretching beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. As the billionaire CEO of Carter Industries, a leader in AI-driven defense technology, he was accustomed to threats, rival companies, disgruntled former employees, even the occasional activist group protesting his projects. But the letter sitting on his mahogany desk was different. It was the third one this month. The first had arrived 2 weeks ago, a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper contained a typed message in block letters. "You are marked for death. They are coming. Stop ignoring the signs." Nathaniel had dismissed it immediately. He had received vague threats before, hate mail from those who despised the power and influence he wielded. His security team assured him it was nothing serious, just another crackpot seeking attention. The second letter came 4 days later, this time with specific details. They will strike at a high-profile event. Trust no one. They are closer than you think. This one unsettled him. It suggested the sender had insider knowledge of his movements. Only his executive team and security detail knew his event schedule, which meant either the sender was well connected or someone in his inner circle was leaking information. Still, Nathaniel refused to entertain paranoia. Now, with the third letter in his hand, he felt the first tinges of true unease. Gala night, late evening, a waiter will have a gun, move fast or die slow. Nathaniel stared at the letter, then exhaled sharply. His fingers tightened around the paper. His annual charity gala was tomorrow night. Coincidence? A lucky guess? Or something much worse? He pressed the intercom. "Send security in." Within minutes, his head of security, Jack Delaney, entered. A former military operative, Jack had been in charge of protecting Nathaniel for the last 5 years. Nathaniel tossed the letter onto the desk. "Another one." Jack picked it up, scanned the contents, and frowned. Same formatting, no fingerprints, no DNA trace. Whoever's sending these knows what they're doing. Nathaniel leaned forward. "And?" Jack shrugged. "My team swept through your entire security detail. No leaks, no chatter online or in black market circles about a hit. I still think it's a scare tactic." Nathaniel's lips pressed into a thin line. "If this is a prank, it's getting more detailed." Jack smirked. "You really think a hitman is dumb enough to send warnings before an assassination? This is some movie villain nonsense. My team has this under control." Nathaniel wanted to believe that, and yet, why did he feel like he was being watched? He ran a hand through his dark hair, exhaling. "Fine. Increase security at the gala, double-check the catering staff, and get snipers on the rooftops, just in case." Jack grinned. "Already ahead of you, boss. Nobody's taking you out on my watch." Nathaniel nodded, pushing the paranoia aside. His security team was the best money could buy. No amateur letter writer was going to rattle him. Still, as he watched Jack leave, the unease in his gut remained. Somewhere, someone knew too much. And that meant he was already in more danger than he realized. The grand ballroom of the Astoria Royale Hotel shimmered with elegance. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, reflecting off the polished marble floors. The city's elite gathered in tailored tuxedos and flowing gowns, their conversations a mix of laughter and hushed business deals over glasses of champagne. Nathaniel Carter stood near the main stage, flashing his signature composed smile, but his mind was elsewhere. The warning letter had said tonight. He had doubled his security. Jack and his men were everywhere, stationed at entrances, exits, and even among the guests in disguise. The catering staff had been triple-checked, and snipers were positioned across the surrounding rooftops. Yet, something felt off. Nathaniel scanned the room, eyes sharp. He had built Carter Industries through calculated risks and cold logic, but tonight he had to rely on something else. Instinct. A waiter passed by, offering champagne. Nathaniel waved him off, his gaze flicking to the man's hands. Steady, no tension. Just another worker doing his job. Was the warning a bluff? Jack approached from behind. "Nothing so far. Every single guest, staff member, and VIP has been checked. Maybe our mystery letter writer is full of crap. Nathaniel exhaled, almost relieved. Maybe Jack was right. Maybe he had overreacted. Then the power cut out. Darkness swallowed the room, gasps erupted, followed by the confused murmurs of the guests. A blackout? No, impossible. The Astoria Royale had backup generators. Before Nathaniel could react, a single gunshot cracked through the air. Chaos erupted. Screams, guests scrambling, the sounds of bodies crashing into tables. Nathaniel dove behind the bar, heart pounding. He reached inside his tuxedo, grabbing the sleek pistol hidden beneath his jacket. Jack's voice barked through his earpiece. "Shots fired! Secure Carter, now!" But Nathaniel wasn't waiting. He peeked out. In the dim glow of emergency lights, he caught a glimpse of movement, a waiter breaking away from the panicked crowd, his hand tucked inside his vest. A gun. Nathaniel raised his weapon, but before he could pull the trigger, a blur of motion came from the side. A janitor. The man tackled the waiter, a glint of steel flashing in his hands. In an instant, the assassin was disarmed, his wrist twisted at an unnatural angle, and a sharp elbow strike to the temple sent him crumpling to the floor. Nathaniel's breath caught. What the hell just happened? Security rushed in, Jack leading the charge, weapons drawn. The team swarmed the downed assassin, restraining him, only for the man to bite down hard on something inside his mouth. Cyanide. Within seconds, he was dead. The crowd remained in a stunned silence. The power flickered back on, but the celebration was over. The billionaire had just survived an assassination attempt. Nathaniel stood up, his grip still tight on his gun. His pulse roared in his ears, but his gaze locked onto one person, the janitor, a tall, rugged man in a dark blue work uniform. His eyes cold, calculating, yet familiar. He had moved with deadly precision, not like an ordinary janitor, but like a trained fighter. Nathaniel exhaled. "Who the hell are you?" The man didn't answer. He just held Nathaniel's gaze for a long moment, then quietly walked away, disappearing into the stunned crowd. Nathaniel turned to Jack, voice low. "Find out everything about that janitor, now." He wasn't leaving this mystery unanswered, and he sure as hell wasn't ignoring the next warning. Nathaniel Carter sat in his private office at Carter Tower, the skyline of the city sprawling behind him. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the surface of his desk, his mind replaying the events of the gala over and over. The letter had been right. Someone had tried to kill him, but the real question was, who saved him? Jack Delaney entered, carrying a thick folder. "You're going to want to see this." Nathaniel took the file, flipping it open. A single name stood out at the top of the page, Joseph Cole. Age, 47. Current position, night shift janitor, Carter Industries. Employment duration, 5 years. Military background, classified. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. Classified? That wasn't something you found in a standard background check? He looked up at Jack. "Tell me everything." Jack exhaled. Joseph Cole isn't just some janitor. He used to be one of the most feared covert operatives in the world. Black ops, deep cover missions. His record is practically erased, but I pulled some strings. He leaned forward. The guy was a ghost, worked for an intelligence agency so off the books that even the CIA doesn't admit they exist. Nathaniel frowned. Then, why the hell is he mopping floors in my building? Jack shook his head. That's the million-dollar question. Something happened years ago, some botched mission. He disappeared, assumed dead. But instead of vanishing completely, he took a janitor job. Here. Nathaniel felt an unsettling realization creep in. Joseph hadn't just saved him by coincidence. He had been watching him for a long time. That meant he knew something. That night, Nathaniel took the elevator down to sublevel 2, the maintenance area of Carter Industries. The air smelled of disinfectant and old concrete. Fluorescent lights buzzed dimly overhead. He found Joseph Cole alone, methodically wiping down a hallway. The man didn't look up as Nathaniel approached. Nathaniel stopped a few feet away. "We need to talk." Joseph's voice was calm, steady. "No, you need to listen." Nathaniel clenched his jaw. "You knew this was coming. You sent the letters." Joseph finally looked up. His steel gray eyes held no fear, No hesitation. Yes. Silence. Nathaniel took a breath. Why? Joseph leaned on his mop. Because I knew they'd come for you. And because I know who they are. Nathaniel's skin prickled. Who? Joseph took a step closer. His voice dropped to a near whisper. The people who tried to kill you, they're not outsiders. They're inside your company. Your board of directors wants you dead. Nathaniel's heart skipped a beat. That's impossible. Joseph shook his head. Number, it's business. You've built something too powerful, too valuable. Your technology is worth trillions, and they don't need you to keep making money off it. Nathaniel felt the weight of his empire pressing down on him. The people he trusted, the ones who sat beside him in meetings, shook his hand, smiled in photos, they were the ones trying to erase him. Joseph's gaze darkened. And they won't stop. That was just the first attempt. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. Then, I need your help. For the first time, Joseph hesitated. A flicker of something, regret, pain, crossed his face. I don't do that anymore. Nathaniel studied him. You saved my life, Joseph. You didn't have to. That means you're still a fighter, whether you admit it or not. A tense silence filled the hallway. Joseph sighed. I spent years running from that part of my life. He met Nathaniel's gaze. But if you want to stay alive, you're going to need someone who understands how these people think. Nathaniel nodded. Then it's settled. You work for me now. Joseph smirked slightly. I already do, remember? Janitor. Nathaniel returned the smirk. Not anymore. The hunt begins. Nathaniel now knew the truth. His own board wanted him dead, and they had enough power, influence, and money to keep trying until they succeeded. But now he had something they didn't expect, a ghost from the past, a man who had outmaneuvered the most dangerous people in the world, and Joseph Cole was about to teach Nathaniel how to fight back. Nathaniel Carter had always prided himself on being 10 steps ahead of his competitors. But now he realized he had been playing the wrong game all along. This wasn't about corporate takeovers or market shares. This was a war, and his enemies weren't some faceless rivals from another company. They were sitting across from him in board meetings, shaking his hand, toasting champagne glasses at gala events, smiling in his face while plotting his murder. But now Nathaniel had an ace up his sleeve, Joseph Cole. Nathaniel's penthouse office was now a war room. The massive conference table was covered in blueprints, security logs, and private financial records of Carter Industries' top executives. Joseph Cole stood at the far end, scanning the files with cold efficiency. He had traded his janitor uniform for black tactical gear, the transformation unsettlingly natural. Jack Delaney paced beside him. This is insane. You're telling me the people running your own company put out a hit on you? Nathaniel exhaled. That's exactly what I'm saying. Joseph tapped a page with his finger. And I can tell you exactly who's behind it. Nathaniel leaned in. Who? Joseph's expression didn't change. Victor Hale. Nathaniel's blood ran cold. Victor Hale, his CFO, his oldest friend, the man who had stood beside him for over a decade, who had helped build Carter Industries from nothing into a global powerhouse. Nathaniel clenched his fists. You're sure? Joseph nodded. Every assassination plot has a money trail. Hale has been moving funds into offshore accounts. More importantly, he's been in direct contact with a group of mercenaries specializing in corporate eliminations. Nathaniel struggled to accept it. He had trusted Victor with his life, and now Victor had tried to end it. Jack swore under his breath. This is bigger than a power grab. This is personal. Joseph's eyes darkened. It always is. Nathaniel refused to run. If Victor Hale wanted him dead, then he'd walk right into his office and look him in the eye. But first, he needed proof. Joseph had a plan. Give Hale exactly what he wants, a weakened, vulnerable Nathaniel Carter. The trap was simple. Nathaniel would announce a resignation meeting with the board, citing recent security concerns. He'd act paranoid, defeated, exactly how a cornered man looks before he falls. Joseph would plant a fake document in Nathaniel's encrypted files, something too good for Victor to ignore. A falsified account of a secret offshore investment worth billions. If Victor took the bait and attempted to steal the data, it would confirm his treachery. But Joseph suspected something else. Victor's not the type to wait. The moment he thinks you're stepping down, he'll move to finish the job permanently. Nathaniel nodded. Then, let's make sure he walks into our trap. The boardroom at Carter Industries was eerily quiet. Nathaniel sat at the head of the long glass table, his fingers steepled together, his expression perfectly controlled. Across from him, Victor Hale smiled too easily. You're making the right choice, Nathan. After everything that's happened, stepping down is the safest move. Nathaniel forced a chuckle. You always did look out for me, Vic. Victor nodded, his expression unreadable, but Nathaniel could see it, the satisfaction in his eyes. He thinks he's won. Then Jack walked into the room, carrying a laptop. He placed it in front of Nathaniel and turned it around to face Victor. A live video feed appeared on screen. It showed a private offshore account, one belonging to Victor Hale, receiving a $50 million deposit from an anonymous buyer. Victor's smile disappeared. Nathaniel's voice was cold. You just got paid for my assassination. Victor froze. Jack drew his gun. It's over, Hale. For a second, there was silence. Then, Victor lunged for his own weapon, but before he could even raise it, Joseph appeared from the shadows behind him. A gun was already pressed against the back of Victor's head. Don't, Joseph warned. His voice was deathly calm. Victor froze, his body rigid. Sweat dripped down his temple. He knew what Joseph was capable of. Nathaniel leaned forward, his voice cold and unforgiving. I trusted you, Victor. I would have given you everything, but instead, you tried to take it all by force. Victor's jaw clenched. You don't understand, Nathan. You were getting too powerful. The board knew you wouldn't step down. They feared you more than they respected you, so they decided to remove you before you became untouchable. Nathaniel's hands tightened into fists. And you agreed. Victor's eyes flashed. I didn't just agree, I let it. The confession sealed his fate. Nathaniel glanced at Joseph. Get him out of my sight. Joseph nodded. With pleasure. As Victor was dragged out, Nathaniel exhaled. The battle wasn't over yet, but he had just taken the first major step toward reclaiming control. The final battle awaits. Nathaniel wasn't safe yet. Nathaniel Carter had never felt fear before. Not when he built his billion-dollar empire from scratch. Not when he took risks that others deemed suicidal, and certainly not when he faced competitors who wanted to see him fail. But tonight, standing in his private penthouse, knowing that a team of professional killers was on its way to finish the job, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Rage. His own board of directors had turned against him. They had ordered his execution like it was nothing more than a business decision, and now, with Victor Hale exposed and detained, the rest of the conspirators had no choice but to eliminate him themselves. Nathaniel glanced at Joseph Cole, his unlikely savior, and now his personal security advisor. The former Black Ops operative stood near the balcony, scanning the skyline with the cold precision of a man who had seen too many battles. How many? Nathaniel asked. Joseph turned, his gray eyes calculating. 6 men, maybe more, trained. They'll come from multiple angles. Rooftops, stairwells, possibly even inside your security team. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. They're making their last move. Joseph nodded. That means we make ours. The attack came fast. The first wave of mercenaries breached the penthouse doors, moving with the speed and efficiency of seasoned professionals. They never saw Joseph coming. Before the first man could fire, Joseph dropped from the ceiling beam, snapping his neck in a single brutal motion. The second gunman barely had time to react, before Joseph grabbed his wrist, twisted the firearm free, and buried a blade between his ribs. Gunfire erupted, shattering the pristine glass walls. Nathaniel took cover behind his marble desk, grabbing a concealed pistol he had hidden there for emergencies. He had been through corporate wars before, but never like this. Jack Delaney, his head of security, barked orders through the comms. We've got infiltrators. Hold the perimeter. But they were outnumbered. 3 more gunmen burst in from the service elevator, spraying bullets. Nathaniel returned fire, hitting one in the shoulder, but the others kept advancing. Then Joseph moved like a ghost, weaving through the chaos. One moment he was behind the couch, The next, he was breaking a man's arm, using his own rifle to mow down his teammate. Nathaniel took advantage of the distraction, placing a clean shot between the last attacker's eyes. Silence. The penthouse was wrecked. Bullet holes riddled the walls, glass shards covered the floor. The air smelled of gunpowder and blood. But they had won. Before Nathaniel could catch his breath, Jack's voice cut through the radio. "Sir, we've got a problem. One of the board members is on the move. You're going to want to see this." Minutes later, Nathaniel and Joseph stood in his security control room, staring at the surveillance feed. A black SUV was speeding out of the underground garage. Inside sat Eleanor Westfield, the chairwoman of Carter Industries, and the real mastermind behind the assassination plot. Joseph exhaled. "She's running." Nathaniel's rage burned hotter than ever. Eleanor had always been a mentor to him, the woman who helped him navigate the business world in the early days. He had trusted her, respected her, and she had tried to kill him. He turned to Joseph. "Can you catch her?" Joseph smirked. "I don't miss." Eleanor Westfield's SUV tore through the midnight streets of the city, heading toward the private airstrip where a chartered jet awaited her. She thought she was going to escape. She was wrong. Joseph, behind the wheel of an unmarked black sedan, gunned the engine. Nathaniel sat beside him, gripping a silenced pistol. This wasn't business anymore. This was personal. As they neared the airstrip, Joseph spoke without emotion. "She's about to board. You want her alive or dead?" Nathaniel didn't hesitate. "Alive. I want her to face what she did." Joseph nodded once, then slammed the gas. The sedan spun sideways, cutting off the SUV's path. Eleanor's driver barely had time to react before Joseph leapt out, gun drawn. Eleanor stepped out, face twisted with fury. "Nathaniel, be reasonable. You don't have to do this." Nathaniel stepped forward, his voice low. "You stole from me. You tried to kill me. And now you think you can bargain?" She smirked, but there was fear in her eyes. "If I go down, I'll take half this company with me." Nathaniel cocked his head. "Then you'll finally know what it's like to lose everything." Within minutes, Jack and the security team arrived, placing Eleanor in handcuffs. The board members who had conspired against him would be next. It was over. Carter Industries was his again. Nathaniel stood in his office at sunrise, staring out at the city. He had won. Victor Hale was gone. The board was exposed. Eleanor was facing prison. And yet, the one person who had made all of this possible, the man who had saved him time and time again, was leaving. Joseph Cole stood at the door, back in his janitor uniform, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Nathaniel turned. "You don't have to go." Joseph smirked. "I was never really here, Carter. You just didn't see me before." Nathaniel exhaled. "I could use someone like you, someone I can trust." Joseph met his gaze, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his expression. "You don't need me anymore." Nathaniel frowned. "Then what do you need?" Joseph hesitated. "Redemption." And with that, he walked out, disappearing just as quietly as he had arrived. Nathaniel watched him go, knowing he would probably never see him again. But some debts couldn't be repaid, and some heroes didn't need the spotlight. Months later, Carter Industries had restructured. Every corrupt board member was gone. The company was stronger than ever. Nathaniel had learned the most valuable lesson of his life. Power meant nothing if you weren't willing to fight for it. And in the shadows, somewhere in the world, Joseph Cole continued his search for redemption. A ghost, walking a path only he could follow. And if Nathaniel ever needed him again, he knew exactly where to find him.